Welcome to Switched On by Tech IP. We have straight talking business conversations with the owners of them running them. Today I'm joined by Jack Donnellan. He's the owner of Taurus Financial Planning based in Liverpool. We're going to talk about his business, why he started it, and what good financial planning looks like for people. So Jack, welcome to the Tech IP podcast. It's called Switched On. You're the first guest. It's a pleasure to have you on board.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, no problem. So Jack is a financial advisor.
Yes.
Running Taurus Financial Planning.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Good. So Jack, there's a few questions I've got to ask you first off. There's a little bit around Taurus. So you started in 2022, so
Yep.
It's coming up to 4 years, I think. Was it August?
Yes.
What made you kind of decide, I'm going to go into that now? And what kind of gap in the market did you see to think, I'm going to specialise in this, and right now, what difference does that make?
Yeah, I think for me, I guess all I was hearing is that the average advisor is 57 plus, and half of them should be leaving the industry in the next 10 years. So I'm only 32 now. Obviously, I was 28 when I started the business, but all I was hearing is there's this massive opportunity for me to go have my own kind of, business. That's what I represent, what I want to do. And I think even selfishly, if I'm a terrible business owner, I should probably still have a job for life. But what I found interesting in running the business is that age isn't necessarily an issue. If anything, it might be a strength where I can say to clients, I'm probably going to be with you for the next 30, 40 years in some scenarios. So it was just seeing an opportunity and really trying to go for it.
It's brilliant, and that was one of the questions, to be fair, further in, but I may as well address it now to anyone that's kind of coming on board with you. The age, because you talk about that, I think a lot of people who think of financial planning, they probably think of doing that later in life, which kind of flies in the face of that. I think the age you being you are and starting so young is a massive plus point from your perspective, because to be fair, we've known each other now for 6 months.
Yep.
The amount of experience and knowledge that you've got kind of shines through. So what do you say to people who say, he's a bit young?
Yeah, I think it's twofold. It's one, hopefully I offer a different perspective on what you might be going through, right? I will deal with clients who are, my oldest client is 91, it's my youngest client who's about a 2-year-old, right? So it's understanding that you're on very different journeys on that side. And I have been a 2-year-old, I can't remember being a 2-year-old, but I also know what the kind of advice you'd be given at either stages of that life, And I think what people want in financial services is that, like anything at this moment in time, all the information is there for you, if it's the AI evolution or Google or whatever it might be, but you need someone to trust who's going to hold your hand through that journey to say, yes, it's going to be okay, this is what other people are doing. And hopefully that's where the age actually comes an advantage to say, if you're potentially 60 and we're going to retire, if I'm going to be here for the next 30 years, who knows? And that's the kind of thing where I think a lot of clients get good peace of mind from.
No, brilliant. I think it's good to tackle that head on, especially from the beginning. In terms of Taurus, could you give an overview of the services that you offer?
Yes, so we are a financial advice business. We are appointed representatives of Quilter, who are the network that operate above me, but I provide what I describe as holistic advice. The only thing I don't provide is mortgages, so it's really trying to say to a client that we will protect you, we will grow your money, and then when it's right, we will retire on your own terms as well.
Fantastic. You work with both individuals and business owners. Is there a particular client that you get the most satisfaction from working with?
Oh, good question. I think at the moment I get a lot of satisfaction from, inheritance tax planning really. I think, tax at this moment in time is very emotive. The idea that we are paying more tax than we ever have, but the information that we're consuming is that public services have never been worse. Now, I'm not necessarily sure if that's true or if that's just, the narrative that's been given. But to try and reframe tax to some people to say, really it's a consequence of your own success. And if you can see it that way and try and do different things with the money, we go from there. So if we talk about inheritance tax briefly, my favourite bit of advice at the moment is actually just telling people to spend the money, to enjoy what they've worked so hard for. And you kind of look at me like, am I allowed to do that? I go, yes,
yeah,
obviously.
It doesn't sound like they kind of from financial advice, but it's brilliant to hear.
Yeah, and I've kind of come to this kind of conclusion where I say to clients that I don't want to be the kind of advisor that wants you to have a big pot at the end.
Yeah.
So I want you to encourage you to go and do all the things that you want to do with that money, as opposed to just, waiting for care or being the richest person in the grave. All these horrible kind of sayings that we have in my industry. But it also highlights the point of kind of getting on and doing what you want to do.
Yeah, so it's kind of planning for the future, but living.
Yes.
Which I suppose that's exactly what it's for. That's something I was going to ask again. It was going to be later, but I may as well ask it now. I think financial plan and financial advice, I think it's something we all need to do more of, me especially. What do you say to people who just say, life's for living, YOLO? What, especially for the younger generation, because I think from stuff that you've told me, if you get into this early on, it's not a lot of money that you've got to put aside to kind of reap the benefits later in life. What do you say to people who just want to spend that cash and say life's for living?
Yeah, and it's really hard because if you can get someone early, because the earlier you start investing, the better the final outcome, right? But it's also trying to find that balance of, I don't necessarily believe in this idea that you have to retire by the time you're 40.
No.
And if you sacrificed your 20s to be able to do so, I would argue, what was the point in doing that? Life is for living, and it's all about trying to strike that balance, right? So if you spend it all and you have nothing left, you've only got yourself to blame. But in the same way that if you've saved it all and then haven't really worked on your personality or hobbies or what you actually want to spend that money on, what was the point in saving it in the first place? But it's really trying to strike that balance. The joke I make at the moment is that, imagine I come to the end of my business year and I've done fairly well, and I say to my better half that we've made some good profit this year, and she asks me where we're going on holiday, and I say, I'm really sorry, I put all the money in the pension, but my God, when we're 60, the holidays we're going to have are incredible, right? So it's trying to find that balance of, yes, you want to live for now and you want to do the things you want to do, whilst also trying to save for your big for tomorrow.
So it's balance, isn't it? I think
yes,
more
absolutely.
than anything else. On business, so business owners tend to treat the business as a pension. Sell it one day, that's the plan, the big cash payout. What do you say to that?
Absolutely. A pension doesn't have to be a pension. It could be your business, it could be a property portfolio, it could be inheritance, which is very common at this moment in time. I think, like anything, is that you don't want to have all your eggs in one basket. And given where technology changes so quickly, your business could be valued something today, but in 10 years' time, could it be worth that same thing? So it's just understanding that, like anything, we take risks every single day. You've got business risk, personal risks, and making sure that you're spreading those risks in accordance with what you're trying to get to is appropriate on that side. But, depending on the type of business, absolutely. But what people will understand is that the saying I like to use is a decision in one area will have a positive and negative effect in another. Fantastic, you've sold the business, you've now got this big old cash injection. What are you going to do with the cash? It's now, right, what am I going to do with my time now I've got this back?
That's probably the biggie, isn't it, the time? Because I know some business owners who've done that and basically got that cash, but I don't think if you've got to that point in life where you've made the millions, say, it's not always about the money. Like I say, the time is the biggie. I think a lot of them just want to get back into something else, and I think that's a big thing. And again, I'm guessing advice comes at that point then as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting, like given the job, you'd think you spend all the time talking about the tax and investment return, but so much of what you actually do is the psychology. I apologise for this whole podcast. There's going to be so many cheesy sayings that I have, but it's the idea. But it's the idea that you retire to something as opposed to retiring from something. If I turn up and say, right, Christine, you're no longer working, it's quite. You might be okay. You'll be running ultramarathons.
Maybe not even 60 or 70.
But it's that whole idea of okay, well, what are you going to do with your time now? And people haven't really thought about that. So what I see a lot is what I describe as modern retirement is this choice to work as opposed to having to work. So if you want to work, 2 days a week and then your income supplements from other sources, I think that's what people like because they've built up their career and identity and also their friends and colleagues as well. So the idea of that I'm just never going to see them again, it's quite hard, But I do a lot of stuff with NHS consultants at the moment. So the idea of me rocking up and saying, right, you're no longer going to be a doctor is never going to work.
It's not going to land well.
But if I can try and slowly convince them to go from 5 days to 4 days to 3 days, it's a lot easier because if they blink and they're 80 and they're still a consultant, to go, actually, probably haven't thought about what I wanted to do here. Not that I ever want someone to tell them how to live their life. It's just to say maybe you want to restructure your work-life balance in those scenarios.
Yeah. And I think that's it. It's if you love what you do from a job, it's great, obviously. But taking the time to stop and think, what would I do or what can I do? Yeah. When that ends, is probably an important point and a question to ask yourself.
Absolutely. And I definitely see generationally the difference in that, where, obviously probably my average client is around 57, 60. And a lot of, what they have is that their identity is their work. Whereas I speak to my generation, whereas, if you sold the business or got a cash injection tomorrow, what would you do? I think everyone would retire and then not care, right? This whole idea that, I've got older advisors that may say to me, well, Jack, you're going to be doing this for the next 30 years. I said, well, maybe I will, but maybe I won't. If someone
Yeah.
in 10 years' time I won the lottery, like I'd be gone. I wouldn't still be working because I'm thinking about what I want to do with my time, as opposed to, you know, this is who I am. And it's really hard to clients to understand that money is a tool to get to where you're trying to get to, and there's a decision that you need to make to, you know, effectively get there.
Have you ever worked with anyone who's won the lottery, by the way?
I have.
Have you?
Yes, I have.
That must be quite a challenge for not necessarily for yourself, because you're going to, but for them coming from, even if you're wealthy by standard terms, it's completely different, isn't it? If you
And I
don't
think,
win the lottery.
I guess to give more context to that, I had her like 15 years after she won the lottery.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. Not the
but it was
immediate
incredible to hear her and her husband's story, where they were just in a normal terrace house. They won a couple million on the lottery. They, you know, bought the big house in South Liverpool, been on this incredible life. Sadly, he's then passed away, and now they're concerned about inheritance tax, which is always like this idea that you won money, but then you want to keep it and protect it to pass on to the next generation, is completely understandable. But it's funny that psychology of where they've been on for this massive win, and then this protecting of their capital going forward there.
It must be hard, because, like I say, I think even if you are financially savvy and you're kind of planning for that future, then to get a big, massive lump sum of money, it must really kind of throw a little spanner in the works. Don't get me wrong, it's a nice spanner, and I would love it 100%, but it still is, I would imagine, a challenge for people.
Yeah. And like I said, it's all psychology, because if I said to you, you had 3 pots of money, one that you worked really hard for, that you saved and put in, one that you inherited from, you know, a parent or a grandparent, or a third one that you won, all 3 you would assign emotional different values to.
Yeah.
You know, you might feel more comfortable spending the wins because you didn't really have to work that hard for it, or you might feel guilty about spending the inheritance tax and the inheritance that you received. And sometimes it takes someone like me to turn up and go, it's just cash.
Yeah.
You know,
take the emotion off the table.
Yeah, but I get it. You know, I'll have clients that have like 20 grand just sitting there in cash because they got it from their grandparent 15 years ago. Yeah. And I have to go, I'm really sorry, he's not going to ask for it back. No. Right? So it's like, crack on, do the stuff that you want to do.
No, it's a valid point. I think emotion can, don't get me wrong, it's great that we've all got emotions, but it can, with stuff like that, I suppose, muddy the waters a bit. Yeah. So talking about cash, people talk about cash in the bank, it feels nice and safe. I know in networking groups, which we've covered, you've covered off about what we call the hidden cost of that. What do you say to people who just want to have that cash?
Yeah, I'd say we all need to have a bit of cash, right? You know, realistically, we need to have an emergency fund of, you know, whatever feels comfortable for you. I have just a random figure of 10 grand. It doesn't make any sense. There's no rhyme or reason. It just makes me feel comfortable, right? When I speak to clients, it's 3 to 6 months worth of income. Yeah. When you're retiring, ideally maybe a year's worth of income. But whatever helps you sleep at night is how much cash you should have. Now, when you have more than that, people then get potentially scared of, well, why are you holding so much cash? Well, in the UK, we have a big, you know, emotional attachment to cash. If cash is king, but is it really? Because, you know, with inflation eroding the value of your capital, you have to do something to make sure it keeps pace with inflation. Now, the whole thing is, you know, the cost of a Freddo over the last 30 years, right? We know how much that
was 10p.
Yes, all that kind of stuff, right? So I appreciate interest rates have become a little bit more attractive in the last couple of years, but if we look at from 2008 when we had quantitative easing, when you were effectively nothing, you had to do something to try and keep pace with inflation on that side. Now, that comes in many different forms. If it's buying property, investing. Now, investing is this really broad, you know, term. What does investing really mean to you? Is it this idea that it's a guy in a pinstripe suit to go and buy, sell, buy, sell? Yeah. Is it buying cryptocurrencies, or is it what I offer, which is a regulated advice where you buy something that's, you know, diverse and appropriate to what you're trying to do? But it's understanding that holding cash for the medium to long term isn't necessarily a good decision, and we're seeing that from the UK government as well. The idea that cash ISAs are starting to reduce is, for us as financial services, we can kind of understand, because whilst I think everyone would say that if you can educate someone, they'll be far better to make an informed decision. But for government and for policy, that takes time and it's expensive. So it's a lot easier to just tax people to get the behaviour that you want to see. Hence why smoking is so expensive. You kind of force people away on that side. So the idea being that if you reduce cash ISAs, do you get more investors? I would say, I don't think you do. I think you just end up punishing people for holding cash and end up paying more tax. But who knows? We'll have to wait and see where that comes. But you can understand, even the government sees that holding cash for a lot of people isn't a good decision.
It's a great answer, by the way. So if people come to you, let's say I come to you, what does that initial conversation look like?
Yep. So I pretty much just review your current position and what you're trying to do. So some people depend on what stage in their lives are. So if you're, maybe in your late 20s and you've just bought a house, maybe starting a young family, the temptation might be, well, Jack, I need to invest and start growing a pot. I said, well, hang on, we need to look after you for today, because if something was to happen, who's going to pay the mortgage? Where's the income going to come from to support your family? So we really need to do your life insurance, your income protection, your critical illness. And I appreciate it's not necessarily exciting, because that's what investing is. It's wow, what it could be. And for me to bring you back down to earth to go, okay, well, let's protect you today, because if you're not able to fund the account because you're no longer working, we're not going to be able to get there. So let's check your protections first. Let's make sure that if you do have cash, that's in the best place for that. And then let's review your potential existing investments and pensions and planning on that side. So I think the question more often than not I get from clients is that, Jack, I have £100,000 in a pension. What will that give me in retirement? And I have to say, it's really the wrong question that you're asking me. Instead, you need to come with an objective. I would like to retire at 65 and I want 10 grand a year.
Yeah, so you need specifics.
Yes, exactly. So if we use that scenario, we can appreciate that. Let's forget tax and investment return for the time being. We know that money is going to be gone in 10 years' time. So we need to decide now either that we're going to contribute more, we're going to take on more investment risk, or we're potentially going to have to think about changing the objective. Either we may have to work part-time, or we may have to retire later, or we may have to utilise other assets to get to where we're going to. And as long as you have that objective, then we can start to make a formulated plan. And it's really hard when I say to clients, especially in your 30s, 40s, even 50s, to say, tell me what you would like in retirement and when that might be. And going, well, I've got no idea. So, I'm not going to hold it to you. But as long as we have a plan that I can say to you that, let's say that, Christian, we decide that you want to retire at 60 and you want 50 grand a year, and we get to that point and I say, congratulations, Christian, you've done it, you've got enough to go retire. You say, well, actually, Jack, I want to keep doing a couple more years. I'm going to go, no, that's not what we agreed. Of course you can continue to work, right? It's that whole thing of saying, modern retirement is a choice, but if you're not doing something to build something, you're not going to have a choice further down the line.
By the way, it's brilliant. The one thing I take from that is, from the outside, in anyone who's kind of considering financial advice, you've just simplified what that onboarding looks like and kind of took away a lot of the stereotypical things with financial advice, investment. You do, I think, that kind of pinstripe suit, you do think of old school Wall Street, things like that. So thank you, by the way, for sharing that, because I think that will hopefully resonate with people to go, maybe I need to have a conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
If someone's listening to this and they think, I probably should sort my finances out, what's stopping most people now from taking that first step, do you think?
I think it's the fear of what you don't know, isn't it, sometimes? I think even if you were to organise a meeting with a financial advisor, I think it's the fear that someone's going to tell you that you're doing it wrong, or that, you've made a mistake, right? But my industry isn't like that at all. It's about how do we make things better? How do we make it more efficient in what you're trying to do? Because the fact that you've got something, you're already ahead of most people, right? So you deserve credit for doing that, right? Now, we may have to change the fund that you're in, or we may have to set an objective, or we may have to start putting something more away. But that's just good advice designed on what you're trying to do. In terms of what motivates people to do it, unfortunately, it's probably fear. The fear of missing out, of, actually, I can see, my uncle never was able to retire because he didn't put anything away. But also, he might have lived a fantastic life. Yeah. And that's the choice that he made at that time. So it's like our society at times can be, quite naive to say, well, this person just got there because they were really lucky. So, well, no, most people who are...
Got to look at the steps.
Yeah, who are my millionaire clients, they were disciplined, they put money away, they sacrificed, and now they've got something at the end where, they can feel like, they're actually getting punished for that now, which I can kind of understand, but it's my whole thing about spending it and enjoying it as well.
By the way, it's brilliant, and hopefully, again, people will definitely resonate with that, because it is, people like to spend money. Don't get me wrong, there's other people who equally love to save money as well, so I think hearing both sides of that coin is important. We talk about the tax man before. Given some of the advice you give to people to maximise their return, do you get penalised heavily? Are you scrutinised and audited heavily from the tax because of that kind of area where you're not making people avoid paying tax?
No.
You're maximising what they can get back.
Well,
at some point.
It's the whole thing, isn't it? What's the difference between tax evasion and tax avoidance? Is the difference of a jail cell, right? Tax evasion, completely illegal. Tax avoidance, is encouraged. You know, funding an ISA and funding a pension is a form of tax avoidance. You're avoiding the tax at that time, right? But I think, like I said before, what we're guilty of is seeing tax as this real, you know, terrible thing. And I get it. Who wants to pay more tax? Yeah. No one does, right? But if you can see it as a consequence of your own success and what that leads to, you know, the comparison for a lot of people is that Nordic countries tend to spend around 70% of their income tax, but their public services are so good, so the trade-off is worth it.
Yeah, they are amazing.
Well, we don't see that in the UK supposedly at the moment. Now, you know, I'm not in like the NHS every day. I'm not, you know, I'm not needing the public services as much as maybe someone else does. So it's easy for me to not comment, but it's that whole thing of, I don't know, it's hard to say if it's bad as it is. Now, clients often will, what I don't fully subscribe to is this idea that you live your life based on the tax, right? You know, if you're a business owner and you're doing very well, you know, you might pay yourself a small salary and the rest is dividends up to like £50,000, so you avoid paying the higher rate tax when you earn more than 50. And I have to say to you, why though, right? If you're earning £1 million a year, all this money's just going to sit there and wait and wait and wait. You know, if you want to pay yourself 100 grand a year, pay it.
Do it.
Right? Okay, you're going to have to pay a bit of tax, but it also means what you get net is so much more than anyone else on that side. But when you're the business owner, you know, you are, of course, wary the tax because you see it from all sources. You see the corporation tax, you see the personal tax, you see the dividend tax, all that thing. If you're an employee, you're going to take that salary and you're not going to care, you're going to move on, right? But it's when it's that whole mindset where tax becomes an issue at times and go, if it really is an issue, then that's when you can fund pensions and ISAs and all that other stuff as well. Yeah. But don't let it ever dictate how you live your life, because what a mental way to live. Yeah,
no, it is, to be fair. And I think it's something from when I was younger, I always kind of, obviously you see people moaning about tax. And it was more from my mindset, it was a case of, well, if I'm paying a lot of tax, it means I'm earning quite a lot of money. Yeah. So I just took that as kind of, well, I'm okay with that. That's for me personally, but that's always been my take on it, to be fair.
And it's like when I turn up to clients to talk about inheritance tax and they can feel like it's the burden of their life, and I say, what an incredible problem to have. They don't really see it that way, but I think after a little, you know, joking and whatever, they see it, okay, yes, I have done well, I have got something. You know, inheritance tax in particular in the UK is completely avoidable. There's lots of stuff we can do. You know, like I said before, my favourite one being spending it. Right? But it's just interesting how people are motivated by the negative as opposed to maybe reframing it and let's look at the positive instead. Yeah,
I think it's easier to see that, isn't it? I suppose this is what's gone. I don't think it probably is a British thing.
Yes, absolutely.
You're FCA regulated. What does that actually mean in practice for someone who's thinking about who to trust with their financial life?
Yes, so I guess credit to our industry where we've been kind of on this journey where, you know, it is a heavily regulated body on that side. So you've got to be a qualified financial advisor to actually give advice. You've got to be signed off by the FCA to be able to do that. For me, I'm part of a network. Yeah. They sign off my cases to make sure they're all appropriate, which means that hopefully for you as the client, you know that you're fully protected and you're getting the best advice possible, as opposed to just, you know, scrolling through social media or listening to advice in the pub of how things should be done. You know, and I think hopefully what comes out of our conversation today is that it's all about advice before products and investments, right?
Which is brilliant, by the way.
Thank you. If you get the advice right, all the other stuff will follow on that side.
It's great, and I think that having a regulation body, I think, is huge, because as you said, Instagram, TikTok and everything else, you get an influencer talking about, I've seen some actually in the press not that long ago, up in court, because they were giving kind of some investment advice, which they've got it's not their line of work or anything, but they're associated to it, I'm guessing, probably seduced by people to publicise that.
Yeah. And hopefully
it's quite dangerous.
And hopefully it's our credibility, right? The fact that we've got a regulator, the fact that I have to do all these exams, the fact that I've put the work in to do it, hopefully gives you trust on that side. And like when it comes to the social media side, there's some fantastic advice out there, right? But you've just got to take the advice. Anytime someone starts recommending funds and investments, that is a recommendation, right? This idea that, you know, it's very dangerous for clients to say, oh, I'm just going to invest in the S&P 500, because that's all that you ever hear on social media.
What is the S&P 500, just in case anyone doesn't know?
Sure, the S&P 500 effectively is the 500 biggest stocks in the US. Right? Okay. But that means you are investing in just the US, right? So if you scroll through and someone's told you to do that and you haven't fully understood why, you know, I would say that's bad advice.
Okay. That's good. That's good advice.
Thank you.
You mentioned a network before. This podcast, to be fair, wouldn't happen without networking. We met at a networking BNI networking group in January of this year. You're now the president of that chapter, so
yes.
Congratulations for that. How would you say networking has helped you in your business?
I think, like any small business, doing the job is hard enough, but it's finding the work, which is the real skill, isn't it? And it's, you know, you can be a busy fool at times where either you go to networking events and if you're quite introverted and you stand in the corner, you're next to the wrong person who's got nothing to do with your business, but you said hello when you first walked in, so like you're partnered with them on that side. But it's networking on that side, if you appreciate that everyone else is in the same boat as you, everyone's just trying to connect with the people that will hopefully do the job that you're trying to do at that time. And, you know, unfortunately for me, you know, I'd love to just, you know, chill in my own space and do whatever, but your visibility is your credibility.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to be out there, you've got to be showing where you are, what you're doing, you're going to turn up to these things and do all the things you want to do. Once you get the network that you're after, you go from there. So I think for me as a financial advisor, you know, for me as well, I'm kind of at this stage in my own journey where do I necessarily want to have a physical space with 10 advisors and all the admin staff, or do I want to just say, you know, actually it's just going to be me going forward and I'm going to pick and choose who I want to work with, which means that I can be more selective with the network of people that I actually want to use and, you know, recommend towards my clients, but it still means I've got to be out there networking with people to see who's the best quality for that side.
Yeah, no, it's good. And I think like networking for people that have never done it, I think you hit the nail on there, by the way. I think everyone's very self-conscious. Even people who are extroverts, you go to a networking event, by the way, they'll be happy talking to everyone. But I think the initial mindset of is I'm going to sell to people who can buy from me in that room.
Yeah.
And that's not the concept, is it? And I think I definitely did think that when I was much younger, and I'm very naive. Whereas now it's just a mindset of, can I build relationships? Can we build trust? Obviously, the purpose of this today is to understand a bit more about your business, and I think that's key when it comes to networking, to then champion you to people who like it now. And I think that's when it really kind of hit home for me. The power of networking is, obviously, I'm a little bit older than you. I'm not going to say how much older, but I've built up my network over the last 15 to 20 years. So I could introduce you to someone just off a conversation. All of a sudden, you could mention a certain person you were trying to be introduced to. I could be connected to them and I wouldn't know. And all of a sudden, it's like, right, there we go and speak to Jack. So for anyone who's not done networking, I'd definitely recommend it. Well, I know you would, given the role. Yeah. But no, like I say, from my perspective, coming on board with BNI in January, it's been a breath of fresh air, and I think it's been great. Yeah. Just bridging into the IT realm. Obviously, we are an IT cybersecurity comms company. How do you value support and security as a business?
Oh, it's up there with my number one priority at the moment. You know, as a small, well, it's just me, right? Yeah. So, you know, with handling sensitive client data and, you know, how sophisticated, I should say, scams are at the moment, just wanting to have someone in my corner to say, listen, we spotted this, it's fine, or, you know, Jack, you connect to this dodgy Wi-Fi, please don't do that again. Right? Just knowing that someone's going to be there to look after me, because there's only so much time you can do in your day, and there's only so much information that you're going to know. So just the fact that I have a full team that, you know, I can call in, 5-10 minutes and someone's gone, yeah, fine, all sorted, is so important to me.
Yeah, it is. And I think given your industry as well, I think anything with financial tagged to it, high target for cyber criminals.
Yeah, absolutely.
So before you are now a client of Tech IP, which is brilliant, by the way, so thank you for joining us. Before you came to us, what did IT support actually look like for you, and was it something that you thought about much, or was it just?
I think, well, when I first started the business, it's like, well, you know, you get yourself your domain name, you set yourself, your cloud computing, whatever kind of stuff, and then you set your passwords. You kind of go, well, do I need much more on that side? And then you go, well, actually, the first issue comes up where you can't get access to something, or it's way over my head. I've got no idea. So, find some IT support from just Google or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And then my previous one, I felt like a very small fish in a very big pond, so it was like asking for help and taking days, if not weeks, for them to get back to me. You know, whoever screams loudest sometimes got service there, and there was just, not a good relationship on that side. So when you guys came in and said this is what we're about, it was absolutely a no-brainer to come over on that side.
Yeah, no, and to be fair, like we champion our kind of solutions as much as possible. But the one thing which I've kind of started to talk about is that response time. So I think a lot of businesses, when it comes to IT and cyber, it's very time sensitive. So I've had some clients say, very happy with my IT support partner. Like, that's brilliant, it's great that you are. Do you mind me asking why you like them so much? And they said, well, they'll respond in a day or 2 days. I'm like, well, that's great, but just for reference, we track ours monthly and our average response time is 16 minutes.
Yeah.
And it lands a bit differently, and I think it's knowing what does that look like. And if people respond, well, contractually in our industry, it's normally 4-hour response time. If you respond in 4 hours for IT problems, it's still a bit of an issue, in my honest opinion. But it depends what that is. And now, response and resolution time, that's where things differ in our world, because me responding to you to say, right, Jack, we've got this, you know we've got that, and we're investigating it, but there could be back and forth. I could try and ring you to test something, you're not there. So that resolution time is a little bit harder. In terms of the kind of experience with us since coming on board, because it's been a few months now, how do you find that part of it? Obviously, if we're responding to things, but what's the engagement like after that initial kind of, if you need to log something with us, how do you find that then?
Yeah, incredibly helpful. I think for you guys, it's like just going the extra mile. Just even once the job's been done, just following up to say, just double checking that everything's all sorted on that side. It seems so small,
yeah,
but it's just, so nice, given that internally the panic is insane. Anytime there's any sort of IT problem, it's like, fight or flight very much of me, and I'm very much, flight at that time. So the fact that you guys just sort it and then check everything's all right,
Yeah, and I think the follow-up's important, and I think that's the thing, because it's easy, and again, I don't want to bore anyone with the kind of tech sector. A lot of it can have a massive emphasis on the tickets, the response times and everything else, but the follow-up is so crucial, because it's like you've made a change, you've kind of updated something, that ticket gets closed, but have you actually followed up to say, right, I know this is closed, can I just double check? Is that still working as expected? And I think working from a bigger company, I've seen it in the past where it was the tickets would just be closed and that was it, but unfortunately another ticket would be opened a week later and it's the same problem. So I think that follow-up's important for, one, making sure it's just fully complete and resolved, but two, for the relationship building, because you've probably got a good relationship with some of our engineers now as well, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hopefully you don't need to call us too often.
No, exactly.
In terms of the move, so in our industry, people always talk about the fear of change. I'm sure it's the same in yours, to be honest, if someone wanted to move financial planners. What was that process like for you, moving from one support partner to another?
Very smooth with you guys, a little bit prickly with the previous firm, but that's, part and parcel at times. But in terms of the transition, smooth as butter, really. There was
That's good.
No issue on that side at all.
And was there anything, was it all kind of business as usual as expected, or was there anything that surprised you during that?
No, it was very much, here's the logins, crack on, tell me what you need, and then great, done within maybe half an hour, if that.
Brilliant. So you've got clients that you trust with the most financial sensitive information. Having IT and cyber support, I'm guessing that's something that you do value. How does it kind of change that responsibility knowing, I'm guessing, not so much from an IT perspective, but the cyber side of it, knowing that you've got that cover in place, does that give it any extra kind of comfort?
That's there? Absolutely. Like, you don't have to do much to even go like the 6 o'clock news to hear about someone who's got a text saying, "Mum, can you call me?" and then a kind of scam on that side, and I feel really sorry for people, but it's also just terrifying as well. People think, "Oh, I'd never fall for that." I'm going, I've been close to falling for that in my own personal stuff as well, right? So the fact that the idea that you'll be able to spot them every time, I think it's quite naive. So you really do need cyber protection on that, on all sides of the business as well.
No, it's a great point, and I think even us in our industry, regardless, because with the advancements in AI, these emails are ridiculously good, and more so as people are busy. You could be glancing at an email on your mobile, which is different. I think, I don't know your take on this, but for me, if I'm in front of my laptop or a PC, I'm a lot more business savvy, probably the best way to describe it. Whereas if I'm walking about and I'm checking emails or notifications from a work thing on a mobile, it's a little bit more relaxed, so it'd be easier for the guard to be a little bit lower.
Absolutely.
If another business owner in the professional services is listening to this, accountants, solicitors, they're people that you tend to work with, aren't they? Someone in a position where you were, what would you say to them in terms of if they were looking at potentially taking on IT and cyber support, or they're with someone and they're not sure What would your advice be?
I think I would compare it to potentially, what I do in terms of the insurances I provide. Life insurance, income protection, all that kind of stuff. The joke I say to clients is that hopefully at the end of those terms, you say to me, what a waste of money that was, Jack. I go, well, it also meant that you didn't die or you didn't have a critical illness, so maybe that was money well spent. So I'd say to any business owner that it's not a problem until it is a problem. So maybe just make sure you're completely sorted and completely happy on that side. Because if the worst was to happen, do you have full confidence in, the provider or the cyber protection that you have at this moment in time?
Yeah, and so we'll focus on 5 pillars, and we cover them in what we do. But it's not just the kind of systems. We'll look at other things. We'll ask some business types of questions as well, just trying to understand the thought process. Have you got like an instant response plan? Does that tie into a business continuity plan? So they're the types of areas we like to cover in addition to all the kind of core technical stuff. This one ties back to how the conversation happened about networking. If you knew somebody who undervalued networking, how do you think you'd convince them? Well, not convince them, kind of put forward the benefits of networking.
Yeah.
Because I think some people have been and have been put off 100% and have just had a bad experience. Yeah. Like I said, I'd like to finish this. We are close to the end now. I'd like to finish around networking if that was okay. Yeah.
I think, like anything, you've got to find what's right for you. There's lots of different types of networking. I've been in golf networking events.
Always a good one.
Exactly. You've done evening ones. I do an early morning one. That's great for me. I'm up, I'm out. I see the same kind of people and the same kind of vibe, and we're off from there. B&I is very good in terms of the structure that it offers. This is the agenda for the meeting. This is your accountability and responsibility that you have for the group. There's no guarantee that you'll continue to be a member just because you pay. Yeah. You've got to, prove that you're aware from that side. And I think because of that, you find the right people to try and connect with on that side. Because whilst you might turn up to an event that might have 50 people in, and if it's just grab a coffee and have a chat, without that kind of structure and that in place, it's quite hard on that side. But I'd say anyone who is scared of networking is that we're all starting in the same position. When I first started, it was just me in the business, so I kind of had to do it. Yeah. I couldn't not do it, right? So maybe fear is an odd motivator on that side. But once you get started and you appreciate that everyone, more often than not, is just nice, right? Because if you're not a nice person, people don't want to do business with you.
You won't be in that room very long, would you?
Exactly, right? So for most networking events, you appreciate that people want you in the room because they want to work with you. And if you can try and see it on the other side of, well, why is this person so keen to invite me? It's not because they're trying to trap you into this complicated membership thing. Right? It's because they generally see the benefit that they've had and they want you to see the benefit as well, and they think that you'd be valuable for whatever networking event that might be. So I would say to people who are hesitant, don't be scared to try, and if one doesn't work, it doesn't mean they're all bad as well.
Yeah, no, by the way, it's a brilliant answer. Brilliant answer, Jack. Thank you. Last one. This is not really business related. If you weren't a financial advisor, what would you do and why?
Oh, good question. If I wasn't a financial advisor, I would be a very, very terrible amateur golfer.
So golf's something you enjoy?
Yes, I love golf. So when clients say to me that, oh, Jack, there's only so much golf I could play when I retire, I go,
no. Not the case.
I'd play every day, twice a day.
How often do you play?
I play twice a week at the moment, nice. But if I had my way, it would be every day. But gotta work, haven't you?
Or when you retire.
Oh yes, hopefully so. Well, there you go. So,
Jack, we're pretty much finished. What I'd like to do is I'll put it in the notes at the end as well. But how can people get in touch with you?
Yes, so you can Google Taurus Financial Planning in terms of find my website. I'm on Instagram and I'm on Twitter as well. But you just Google my name, Jack Donnellan. I'm on the FCA register on that side, but it should be relatively simple to find. And then in terms of what I offer, there's no cost for the initial meeting. If you just want to have a chat to review things, we can go through the whole structure and then talk about what kind of stuff you're trying to achieve.
Fantastic. Jack, it's been a pleasure.
Brilliant.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Christian.
Cheers.
Cheers, mate.